Hi, everybody, on whether you're joining us here on Zoom or on Facebook. My name is Brian from Gays with Kids, and I want to welcome you. It's great to have you here. Today, so first I want to start by saying I'm a dad through adoption and surrogacy, actually, and I'm also the head coach for GWK Academy. So trust me when I tell you, I know just how important it is to be as prepared as possible before you start your own journey to parenthood. That means getting educated not only about the process, but also being prepared to face any obstacles you may come up against during your journey. And let's face it, with everyone I know that has an adoption or a surrogacy journey has obstacles that they have to overcome. And that's why I'm happy to have you join us for this conversations on things that can go wrong for an adoption journey. Now, I hope you don't come up against any of these issues, but if you do, you will now have the information and the tools you need to overcome them. Now, as we're preparing for this discussion, Eric, could you go to the next slide, please? It makes sense that we turned to the Gays with Kids adoption mentor and guru, our dear friend, Molly. Molly, thank you so much for joining us. It's always great to see you. By way of background, everybody, Molly is the founder and owner of JustChoice, and she is a leading voice, if not the leading voice, advocating for the adoption community to support all options available for birth parents. And she's long been an advocate and proponent for LGBTQ plus family building. Once again, Molly, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Great. So without further ado, we can get things started. And Eric, if you go to the next slide, please.
Okay, everybody, welcome. Again, I'm so excited to be here with you. I am assuming if you are here, it's because you are considering an adoption journey or you are deep into it. So we're just happy to be in this space with you. So today we're, as Brian said, we're just here to talk about challenges that you can face while you're going through adoption journey. So the first and the biggest one I think that most people come to me asking about is failed matches with pregnant people. So the national stats show that about 50% of pregnant people will change their minds in the process. So first of all, it's always a great question to ask your agency what their sort of their rate of failed matches is. I think, secondly, the one thing that we tell many families is that we don't see failed matches as, you know, as a challenge in the long run. Really what you want is a pregnant person or a birth mom that chooses you to have peace in their heart about their decision. And so if there is not peace in her heart, then it is not a good match. And I know that while you're in the middle of it, after you've put a ton of time into it, and you've fallen in love with her, it's really hard when she changes her mind. But, you know, Brian and I can both tell you that when my daughter is now 13 years old, and I get to tell her that her mom was full of peace about her decision. You know, if those questions are looming, or if that peace is not in her, we have to answer to that to our children once they're older and they want to know more about their story. So that is a big one, and I think it's one for us to always keep in mind. The next is unforeseen expenses and costs adding up beyond what is expected. I think that we have all seen how expensive adoption can be. I actually forget what the national average is now, Brian. I think it's like around 45,000. Is that about right?
Yeah, I say between $40,000 and $50,000.
Yeah, so I think that what is the thing to remember here is that sometimes what can happen, and another good thing to ask your agency is sometimes what happens is birth moms are allowed to have living expenses. And so some agencies, many agencies, once you accept a match, they're going to have you put birth mother living expenses in escrow. And so you can, you could be giving a person living expenses and they could have a change of heart. Those monies would not be returned to you. So that's one way that families, I mean, when I first started my agency, I did a focus group with a group of families, and one mom, they were 3 years out on their journey, and she sobbed at the table that they had spent $9,000 in living expenses on moms who had changed their mind, and how just heartbreaking that was to her, that they just felt like they kept giving money and giving money, really with like little trust in the process. So I think, first of all, you know, good agencies are managing those expenses well, and they're using them in a way that is really going to help uplift your birth mother. But also it's something that you just need to be, you know, keeping in mind and paying attention to. Also, attorney fees can begin to add up, especially if there's something that may go wrong in the process. So like possibly a birth father stepping up, or, you know, not expecting, you know, a judge to have a question, things like that, that could just add up to expenses for attorneys. And then also medical fees can rise as well. So when you're paying for your adoption journey is going to include, you know, your home study and all that you need in order to be able to adopt. And then it's also going to include all the birth mother's expenses. So her living expenses, her legal expenses, her medical expenses. Medical expenses can be hard because sometimes she has Medicaid, and so that means there's no fees, and sometimes she has private insurance, so you're paying for her copays, and again, that can just range drastically. And then sometimes they don't have insurance at all, so you're just really working with the hospital and your agency or your team of attorneys to help you get a plan for that. Many moms, though, are eligible, so we always push to fight for that, for them to be able to get the coverage they deserve. But I think like the most important thing I want you to hear here is this is why an agency you trust is so important, because you just want them to be able to be really clear about the fees that you can expect, so that you can be prepared and you're not caught. You're not surprised. So I think that it's just being clear with them, understanding, yeah, so I think that that's what I would say for that piece. And it takes time to make a match. That's also a really important question that we are asked so often. The national average is 2+ years that it takes for a family to be matched. The stat that we used to say is that there were 36 waiting families for every one baby available for adoption. But what we are hearing in the movement, that is closer to 100 waiting families for every one baby available for adoption. So you can see there's only 1% of pregnant people who are going to be choosing this option. And so you can see why it would take some time. I think, again, like this feels a little bit like that failed match conversation, and that, you know, we had a family one time where the family waited 2 years for their match. And the one thing the adoptive dad said is, I would have waited a lifetime for her, for the birth mother that chose them, you know? So I think, again, it's it's just having trust in the process. It's being patient. It's knowing that what you really want is a match that feels right for you and for her. And sometimes that will take some time. And also, the time it takes for a match is so hard. It's a really hard question for agencies to answer, because it could take you 5 days, or it could take you 2+ years. Everyone's situation is so unique. But it still is a good question to ask the agency you're working with, but also just to, you know, be prepared for.
Hey, Maya, I just want to interject for 1 sec, please. I neglected to let people know that they should ask questions.
Yeah.
We'll get to them at the end, but you can use the Q&A or the chat functions here on Zoom, or comment on the video here on Facebook. Let us know if you have any questions. I promise we'll get to them after we get through all this. Thank you, Molly. Sorry.
There is a question. Should we answer it now or wait till the end? We can probably.
Why don't we wait till the end? Yeah.
Okay, cool. And this is being recorded, right, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay, next one. So the next one is, I asked Brian to add this because I think that we've been seeing it a little more often now where the partner or the husband is not aligned. So this would be an example. You have a pregnant person who is really interested in you, but she wants a very, very open adoption. And you are like, down, let's go. I feel great about it, but your partner has hesitation. Or many times this is in regards to openness, and it's in regards to drug and alcohol use. So I think that those are two things that and race, I would add that. So openness, drug and alcohol use, and race. I think that it's really important to have those conversations, because there are times that agencies will call you and say, we have 24 hours for a match, or the baby is already born, and here is the situation. And you want to make sure that you and your husband are aligned in that moment, and you know sort of where your boundaries are or where your rail guards are, that you're not, not going to be going over those. You want to be able to coming into a match where you both feel at peace about it. My second one, as Brian will tell you, open adoption. This is my jam. It's why I'm in this work. We believe that adoption should feel like community to families. And so I think that, many times when families come to me, or come to any agency, one of their biggest fears is openness. And the truth is that the world does not give us beautiful views of openness. I think that's changing with social media, but like, I remember movies we used to watch, like Losing Isaiah, and like, I can't remember some of the other ones, but the world just has always given this narrative where they're not, they're not showing the humanness of the birth mom. So many times, one thing I tell families is that, like, what we're fearing is like the world has told us, but then that day that you are sitting face to face with the person who chose you, all of those fears fall aside. And all of a sudden, all you want is deep connection to her. So I think open adoption fears is so often where families begin the process. By the end, I would say many times families are wanting more openness than their birth mother is willing to give. And so I would just say, rip your heart wide open for openness. This is the only way adoption is done well. If your birth mother does say she wants to close adoption, be prepared that she is going to change her mind and want openness, and know that any level of openness that you have with her is going to be a gift to your child in the future. And the final one is working with the wrong family building partners. So first of all, you guys are in the right space. This should not be a real fear of the people who are on this conversation, because the truth is, if you are connected with an organization like Gays with Kids, you will be connected to the right family building partner. What we always say is make sure that that agency is screaming from the mountaintops that they are open to all families. First of all, it's what pregnant people want. Second of all, it's what you deserve. And so if you believe that you have chosen the wrong team, I want you to know there's always options. And so turning to Brian, you can always come to JustChoice to talk about that as well. But there's always options if you're feeling like your team is not strong. These people that you are having be a part of your team are going to be some of the most important people in your life. And so I think taking the time to find the right ones is smart. And so that's why I love that you guys are here. Again, Brian has a team of people that he refers to for adoption. Those are all people who can be trusted. And really what Brian and we share the same feeling that the best agencies are going to center the pregnant person. The best agencies are going to offer all options to the pregnant person. So just like a side note, I really believe that a pregnant person cannot make a good adoption plan unless they have all options to their pregnancy legally available to them. So for example, if they could have chosen abortion, they should have had that right. They shouldn't choose adoption just because they cannot access that. So I think it's totally open adoption agencies, agencies that support all choices, and agencies that support all families. Next, yes. So yeah, so the ways to overcome these hurdles, we just talked a lot about this, is ensure your family building partners have your best interest at heart. And lean on them for support, reassurance, and guidance. Again, this is where I really think that Gays with Kids Academy can be a special place for you to have that support. Distract yourself during the waiting period. Yes, we always say, sometimes people like, we are going to go to this trip and we're going to wait, or we're thinking about making this job move, but we're going to wait. I'm just like, do not stop your life. Keep doing the things that you would normally do. That match is going to come at the perfect time. So go on the baby moon, discover that hobby, enjoy your partner, sleep, sleep as much as possible, get those house projects done. Your life is going to totally change once that match is made, once that baby comes. So do all the things. Stay up late and drink wine. Do you, boo?
Go on brunches. Go out to
Yeah.
brunches. That was my kid that I missed the most.
Exactly. Explore funding options. Again, this is a great place for Gays with Kids. They have access to funding options. Also, your agency, once your match is made, there's going to be able to be time to talk about, subsidies that are available in your state, about the federal tax credit, all of those things, as well as grants that could be available to you. Again, Brian, can you remind me who, I'm so sorry, who's
No
part of
worries. So we have, we have helpusadopt.org is the largest one. They provide grants of up to $20,000, which, as you heard me say earlier, adoption costs somewhere between 40 and 50,000. So that's pretty significant. And then there's also another grant organization that does great, like when turns out, you need $5,000 or $10,000, like you talked about, Molly, for health insurance or for co-payments or for living expenses that you didn't expect to have, that are available as well. So yes, love to share that information with anyone who comes across that need, for sure.
Yeah. And they can find that information on your website too.
Yes.
Correct. Because we send families to Gays with Kids site often for that. And then make time for your partner. Here's the thing I think I would say is that if there are things that you guys are not aligned on, or there is something you need to work out before you are adding to your sweet little family, this is the moment. Moms will see. If not, so spend time with each other, get those kinks figured out, fall in love all over again, get excited together. This is a really special time for you. And I think too, the closer you can get and the stronger you can get your partnership, the even more exciting it will be for her when she chooses you and gets to meet you.
Yeah, just to add to that, even, Molly, I think it could be a great time to talk about how you're what are the major beliefs you have about raising your child? What religious affiliation you want to have? What are the ways, how what kind of parenting styles, etc. Get an alignment on that stuff before the baby's home. That is also great.
So good, Brian. I totally agree.
Thank you. All right, so we love to give you this information on the webinar, but I know this is certainly not something that's going to fully prepare you for your adoption journey. So that's why we like to talk about next steps. So for us, your next step would be to enroll in GWK Academy. That is our platform for helping gay and queer men become parents through adoption, foster, and surrogacy. We have courses written specifically for you. I would love an opportunity to have an introductory call with you to talk about your particular story and see, answer any questions you may have. As Molly mentioned, part of GWK Academy, a very important part of it is to connect you with vetted family building partners who meet the criteria that really Molly sets the standards for us, birth parent centered, and just making sure also that they are very, very supportive and advocates for LGBTQ plus family building. So the best way to get involved in GWK Academy is to download our app. It's available on Apple and Google Play, called GWK Academy. And you can then enroll in our adoption and foster course from there. And for those of you who are lucky enough, we'll be able to connect you with Molly. We're constantly sending folks to Molly as well when she has opportunities to add new waiting families. All right, with that said, I know we've got several questions. Molly, Jesse, do you see the question from Jesse? Oh, you're on mute.
When it comes to adoption, do states have different laws in regards to the home visit? So, first of all, the home study is actually made up of sort of 3 parts. So it's a series of documents that you would complete, a series of trainings that you would complete, and then also time with your adoption assessor. The home visit usually happens during your time with the adoption assessor. So I just want to make sure that you know that the home visit is just a really small piece of actually the full home study. And yes, laws are different in each state. Like, for example, some states will make you get a fire inspection. Some states will have really interesting rules, like the one you're saying you've heard about in New York City. I think that specifically for New York, that we work with Spence Chapin in New York, so they would be a really great agency for you to actually ask specific questions. I will say a lot of times when you're talking about a room with 4 walls, I think that that's for children over infant, so you might be okay for an infant home study. But yeah, so the answer is yes, it is different. And I would say find an agency that you trust in your state. A good place to start is Gays with Kids and working with Brian. A second place to start is the Human Rights Campaign. Seal of adoption approval, start at the innovative agencies, which we are. Start there and find an agency in your state that you know for sure is welcome to all families. And this is a perfect question to ask them.
Yeah. And I'm just gonna, if I could just interject,
Yep.
in New York City, at least a dozen years ago, when we were, which is where we were living, when we became dads to our son Levi, who is 14 now, we just needed to have a place for him to sleep. And the very first blog post I wrote for Gays with Kids was called "All You Really Need Is a Suitcase or a Drawer." So as long as you had a safe place to sleep, that passed it. And the other question I want to, someone asked about, oh, got several, allowing birth parents to change their mind after the birth. And as long as they're saying that changes, that's done on a state-by-state basis. It is true that in New York City, we also, I forget how many weeks the birth mom had, and it's, it's a scary time, but as Molly said, at the end of the day, everything has to be done with an open heart.
Yeah, and I think what happens is, like, many times states will have a certain amount of time where she has to wait to sign, and then some will have an additional revocation period. That's going to be when your agency makes the match, they will give you all of that. They should give you all of that information so you know exactly what to expect and what her rights are. So yeah, and every state is different. That is true. So can you tell us a little bit more about open adoption, what that can look like? How is this supported by your agency? So open adoption, again, I feel like I haven't done this. I haven't done a panel in a while, but I think the stats used to be like 85% of pregnant people chose open adoption. But I think that we are leaning more towards like 99%. Like, even if a pregnant person says they do not want openness, you're going to see them want to open up, at some point. And so even for us, like, for example, we have a family that's matched and they were asking me about the birth father, and, we just don't know a lot of information, and the birth mother wasn't, feeling safe in that moment to talk about it. But what I am telling them is like, like, the signing is a part, a moment in time, and then but you have a whole lifetime with her. So this moment, she may not want openness, but we always want your heart to be open to that. As far as our agency, what we do to support that, we do not do mediated open adoption. We have our families directly connecting with with the person that has chosen them, and so we support that connection from the back end. So she might contact us and say like, this is happening and it's feeling weird, and then we're supporting her. Or the same thing, like families will say, oh my gosh, she's saying she wants to name the baby. What do we do in this moment? And we're helping them. So just sort of standing behind the match and not in the middle of it. Brian, I'm hoping that I answered that right. It
Yeah.
says you recommend signing with 2 adoption agencies to speed up the matching process. I think, it's really expensive to do that. I don't think there are very many families that can work with 2 agencies. But there are, Brian and I have been talking with groups like Pear Tree, which is an online sort of, Brian, how would you, it's the reason why we're comfortable referring to Pear Tree is because the people who we're referring to them are going to have contact with an agency as well. So I think it's still important to have that, because you want to make sure that there's no steps skipped for her. Again, like when my daughter is 13 now, and I want to be able to tell her a full breadth of this story that happened, even if there are dips in the story and negative and hard times, she deserves to hear it all. I would never want her to hear that something unethical did, or her mom was pressured, like she shouldn't have had to choose adoption. We don't want that to be our children's story. So I think 2 agencies is hard, but I think like there's ways now that you can market yourself, that you can, work with, agencies potentially like Pear Tree. There's other ones out there as well. But Brian, what were you going to say?
That's exactly what I was going to say, is that I don't know anyone that works with 2 agencies, but there are ways to help market your family to prospective birth parents, so that you can reach perhaps more people than just what your adoption agency.
Yeah.
is able to
So
do.
I think, so much is changing. And even since COVID, so much has changed. And I think that more pregnant people are finding families online. And that's why, Brian and I have been communicating with groups like Pear Tree, because, the truth is like, that could be the way that women are finding families, and we want to make sure that there's support in that process. So that means like Brian and I are putting them to the fire. We are asking them hard questions. We're pushing back on them. We're making them, really, we're looking at all the agencies they're referring to, making sure that they center pregnant people, center families. Those are the things that we are doing. But I think that if I were to be honest, I would say an agency and an organization like Pear Tree could be really cool. Or we have some families who have a Facebook profiles, and they're doing a really good job. They don't need Pear Tree, they do it on their own. Sometimes there's attorneys that you can connect with in your local community that may randomly have birth moms come, and you can tell them about you. So there's other ways, but I think 2 agencies is just unaffordable.
Yeah. And the other thing is, back in the day, at least when we were going through, like, we took it upon ourselves to make sure everyone in our network, people I went to college with, people I used to work with, 8-10 years earlier, that they all knew that my husband and I were looking to grow our family through adoption, because you just never know who from your own community, your own network, can come into contact with a pregnant person. So that is something that I strongly encourage everyone to do, is make sure you let the people know that you're looking to grow your family through adoption.
Yeah.
All right, Molly, one last question. If we know we'd like to adopt 2 kids, to have 2 kids in the future, how do you recommend this? How do we?
I'd say go for it. Like in the past, we've had 2 families matched, or a family matched at the same time with 2 moms, and they move forward with both matches. We tell families we trust their process. I think it's a great question to ask the agency you're working with, because I think what we want is agencies that trust us. So the only thing that we ask our families is if they are, some people are doing surrogacy at the same time as they're doing adoption. And the only thing that Brian, those eyes are terrible. But the only thing that we ask is that, and I think agencies too, is just to keep us informed, because it's, only fair that if we're presenting you, we're able to tell the whole story. That doesn't stop someone from choosing someone that they're, if never has it been like, oh, they're doing surrogacy. They don't, moms are choosing you for, I think, like, to them, it just means that their child will have a sibling. And I haven't seen like that be a deterrence ever. So I say go for it. I think whatever feels right for your family, trust your gut and go for it.
That's awesome. Well, we are past the half-hour mark, and I promise this is going to take till 11:30. Molly, thank you so much as always. I just love having your expertise and your passion on any webinar that we ever have. So all of you watching, once again, thank you so much for joining us. If you'd like to get connected with Molly, we'll provide you her contact details in a follow-up email. Or you can send an email to dads@gayswithkids.com, and I'd be happy to make that introduction for you as well. If you have any questions about GWK Academy and how we can support your journey, or just any questions in general, again, send them to dads@gayswithkids.com. So whether you're on Facebook land or Zoom land, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate having you here. And we hope that if you're pursuing your own adoption journeys, that all goes well. Thanks, everybody.